Liberáli je živým dôkazom, že s filozofickým vzdelaním sa nemusíte báť ani PR a marketing. Dámy a páni, šanovní páni profesoře, pán rektor Abrahám, let me switch in English. Professor Legutko, who is our distinguished guest today, is a philosopher and politician. He's a professor of philosophy at Jagiellonian University in Krakow, and he specialized in ancient philosophy and political theory. He was active under communism as a samizdat editor Arka. He's now active in Ośrodek Myśli Politycznej, in Center of Political Thought in Krakow. In Czech language, you can interesting sentence. In Czech language, you can read his book translated under the name Poľského demokracie a iné eseje. However, his opus magnum is a book on Socrates that was discussed just before this. Our second guest tonight is Samuela Abraháma, philosopher and public intellectual in Slovakia, rector of respected, valued Bratislava Liberal Arts College here in Bratislava. Also specialized in political philosophy and editor of Kritika and Context journal. He wrote two books. First was published under the title Pokus o analýzu slovenskej spoločnosti, and second, Resetované Slovensko, čistá teória versus politického. Now, we will open the debate in this manner. Both guests will have from 5 to 10 minutes opening speech on issue why I am liberal and not conservative. That's the topic for Professor Abrahám, and why I am conservative and not liberal for Professor Legutko. Then we will have two shorter exchanges on particular issues. I think it's time to start, so prepare now, because conservatives always prefer to defend things, not attack. So let's invite Professor Abrahám to attack. And please tell us about your liberalism and its foundation. Thank you.
Thank you for welcoming words, and the last thing I would like to attack anyone here. I think the part of actually the liberal idea is a dialogue. Attack is not even in a metaphorical sense. Now, evidently, and I respect that society of let's say Hanus is inviting someone like me to debate an issue that might not be of the nature of what is usually the corpus of group of people whose main aim is to promote conservative thought, perhaps surrounded by religious morality. Now, I am supposed to tell you why I'm liberal, and actually this is for the first time I do that, because in fact when I lived in Canada I was rather a left-oriented person. I'm liberal here because being left here is we are associated with communism or former communism, and that's the last thing what I want. That liberalism is usually seen as the hyper-tolerant, relativistic ideology, and especially in our countries, former communist country, it is blamed for all the ills of society, corruption, and all this wild privatization that the weak state, due to liberals, had allowed those oligarchs to squander, to take away what was here and what was our common. Now, my main question here is why liberalism emerged? Because if it's blamed for everything, for all the bad, why this ideology emerged? Now, some of you might know that this is a very recent ideology. It's a late 18th, early 19th century when liberalism emerged. And as opposite to, let's say, Marxism, which wanted to destroy anything what was in front of it, or Nazism that wanted to clear out anything that was in front of it, liberalism as an ideology was a response to a condition in Western societies. And the condition in Western society and politics was that no longer God or transcendental being served as the legitimizing agent of politicians, of kings. No longer anybody could stand up, I'm your leader, I'm your king. Well, they did it, even during the 19th century, but it was through arms. The legitimacy of the monarch was weakening. And there were several ideologies that emerged. How could human beings, without having a transcendental knowledge, having reason but not knowledge, how can we arrange our relationship, our life, that we don't kill each other in a Hobbesian way, and we don't rely only on materialistic dependence or fear? And liberalism actually has provided a very unique and very decent answer. And one way to define itself was that it didn't provide an end, what it wanted to achieve. You know what's the end communists tell you. You know what's the end fascists wanted. And actually there is even an end for a number of conservatives who sees the end that during the second coming of Christ or another Messiah, we will be questioned, examined, and our life will be tested, our politics will be tested. This is not the case with the liberalism. Actually, as soon, liberalism assumes, as soon as you provide an end, the goal, it's no longer liberalism. Now, it is very odd that liberalism is blamed for everything that troubles our modern society, because every society today has the structure, every liberal democracy, or actually every country in the world has the basic structure which is originated in the ideology of liberalism, to create three institutions that guarantee something that doesn't have a transcendental anchor, doesn't have an transcendental help. And that is, of course, government, parliament, and judiciary. And fortified by elections. That's why we talk about liberal democracy. Now, of course, we will hear, and we heard, different definition of democracy. For my purpose, democracy to me is the way how political leaders are selected. I am aware there are many different definitions of democracy, but this is for me relevant and important, that how justly a majority through general election selects its leaders. And then those three institutions that are basically based on liberal ideology, liberal thought, how to create a check and balances in a society, and how to assure justice, freedom, human rights for individuals. Because it is not the constitutions that you read in various countries, and each country, almost every country, has a constitution with those lofty words. I mean, as you know, that one of the most beautiful constitutions was written in 1936 in the Soviet Union. Actually, it almost had a literary quality, but it had nothing to do with reality. The same is today, that you don't judge society according to its constitution, even in institution, because each country, even Iran, has a parliament, has a government, has a judiciary. But how an individual feels, what's his psychological feeling in the society, whether he or she feels safe, whether it provides impartiality, the judges, and whether it's allowed to have a free speech and be able to debate without being afraid to be denigrated or put to prison. Now, since its creation, or since its inception rather, of liberalism, there were strong critics, and from the right and left. Now, that actually allowed liberalism to adjust itself, because it didn't have the end, the kind of utopia to create. It adjusted to time and its critics. And actually it is very interesting because liberalism itself has phases. There are early liberals and late liberals. And early liberals from the early 19th century actually remind very much current conservatives. And this is sometimes very difficult for conservatives to admit, because the conservatives of that time were those conservatives who wanted a restoration through Congress of Vienna or post-Napoleonic era, restore the monarchy in its conception and structure, where the legitimacy is provided by God and king stands above everything else. This is not the conservative arrangement any conservative today wants. Actually, Satinsky at some point in 91 said, well, why don't we have a kingdom when king would rule? But you know, Satinsky was a great comedian, a satirist, and no one would take it seriously. No country after '89 took a regime that was even resembling anything from 18th or 17th century. Every country after the fall of communism took a liberal democratic structure as its base. No one forced us, whether in Czechoslovakia, Poland, Hungary, to have it. It was automatic. There was not even a debate about that. It was, and all these arrangements are liberal democratic. Yet, we have so many critics, both here and in the West. We know from the left, there are many critics, who says, actually the whole liberal democracy and liberalism is just a cover-up for big business, for imperialism to continue in a different disguise. That it is something that allows and assures the economic disparity between poor and rich. Right-wing or right of different kinds. It can be right being conservative, it could be nationalist, could be ultra-nationalist, all kinds of right. They see that liberalism undermines all moral values, even religious beliefs, spirit of patriotism and national pride. This is something that liberalism allows. Moreover, liberalism makes our country and our state weak. They are not able to defend our values, confronting those either who have money or who have different aims to destroy us. Actually, it is not true, because liberal democracy, as you might know, can be very strong, and actually it defeated its enemies during the 20th century. And you know, the two greatest enemies. One was communism, and it defeated it with its own arms, with its own challenge economically. And liberal democracy defeated fascism, again with the same arms, with arms itself. So liberal democracy can harness, create power that is able to defend itself. And the state itself has to be strong, because if you know something about welfare state, or assuring impartiality of courts, or justice, you need a strong agent. You cannot leave it just to the market or good human nature. These things has to be supervised, regulated. As you know, liberal democracy or liberalism was particularly blamed, for example, for the crisis in 2008, financial crisis. And as you know, it is not the problem of liberalism that created that crisis. It was unregulated markets that were actually allowed to do anything with our money or with the money of the states without any supervision. And soon afterwards, following Maynard Keynes' politics of the 30s, it was all accepted that financial market must be regulated. Now, of course, liberalism provides a structure. It's an ideology. Ideology is usually seen as something bad. But actually, ideology, as I mentioned at the beginning, has been created in 19th century as almost in a panic, as a reaction, where no longer transcendental legitimacy was provided by God. So ideology provided, how can we function together? Liberalism is an ideology, so human-invented arrangement of our relationship, where we can live free, we can have a justice, and how we can negotiate this. This is one of the options. We could have any other. We could have in free election, elect Hitler, we could elect Mečiar, we can elect anyone. We are free. We can elect Orban, as the Hungarians did, who says he prefers illiberal democracy. So there is nothing preordained about liberal democracy or liberalism, that it must be a dominant ideology of today. Now, let me just mention very quickly, because I know that it will be better debated in our discussion. What are the practices and norms and values? It talks, and that's where I believe that liberal democracy is best arrangement even for believers, because it's one of the fundamental things is the religious toleration. This is the key thing. Freedom of discussion and movement, free press, free elections, constitutional government, and of course free market. Liberalism has no problem of disparity, economic disparity. That distinguishes liberalism from, let's say, social democracy. And disparity is allowed because it is a natural development of a functional society, of providing incentive to people. Now, what has to be done is to create, to avoid the disparity between rich and poor. And this was the aim since early 20th century by so-called late liberals, who said we cannot leave market to do whatever it wants. We have to have welfare state. We have to have a social net, not to let poor people to fall through and become homeless, as many homeless people are. Okay. Now, it is against autocracy, elitism, theocracy, and collective ownership. Now, I'll read you 4 authors who, to me, represent the key pinnacle kind of ideas that I think tells me that liberalism is the most cherished thing that our societies have. And one is Richard Rorty, who says the liberalism, because there are several definitions of liberalism, but he says this is the ability to put yourself in the shoes of others and then know what's suffering. And once you are in this position, you can extend your network of people whom you can share whatever you have. And this is and wider and bigger is this net, this group of people, the better for the society. Stephen Holmes actually is another definition, or says that the public disagreement may have been the most novel, radical, and positive principle of liberal politics. John Gray, another English philosopher, and it's very interesting, that man differ from animal primarily neither as a possessor of reason, this is very interesting, nor as an inventor of tools and methods, the technology, but as a being capable of choice. Because no one is going to choose for you. And this is why I respect liberalism, however imperfect it might be. This is the hope and aim. Now I'll go to the final one, and actually this is a philosopher who was very conservative, Ortega y Gasset, whom you might know. And actually what he says, liberalism is a supreme form of generosity. It is the right which the majority concedes or gives to minorities, and hence it is the noblest cry that has ever resounded in this planet. And now listen. It announces the determination to share its existence with its enemy. And moreover, enemy that is weak or weaker. So this is something about liberalism that tells me in our society. We discussed before Callicles, remember, the hero of our time, the might is right. How do you respond to human nature full of inhibitions, full of emotions, full of hatred, full of fears that we have? How do we respond to this? And how do we assure that you obey certain laws when you realize that those laws are artificial, those laws are made by other people? And in this very fragile arrangement, liberalism really provides a ground for a decent living, and then it is up to us to what extent we want to add to those three institutions I mentioned, judiciary, executive, and parliament, and free election, how you want to make it also a decent regime where human rights and freedom and justice is fulfilled, and where any human being, including someone from minorities, because this is very important, also feels safe and is not afraid that his or her rights will be denied. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Abraham. And now, Professor Legutko, if there is anyone in this room who is ready to criticize democracy and liberal democracy, it's him, because he has not only his own problem with democracy or critics of democracy, but also his experience he was almost sued for his speech in Poland.
Wait, almost. I was.
You were, but you asked for your immunity. Ladies and gentlemen, you did not, so I had that information.
I was charged and sentenced.
I'm sorry. So we will know more now. Professor Legutko.
No nonsense about immunity. Come on. We live in a liberal democracy. I mean, the enemies of liberal democracy must be got rid of once and for all. So to have freedom preserved. So let's get rid of all those, bad people like myself. But I'm in a friendly society nowadays, so well, I was asked to make a statement about why I am a conservative and not a liberal. I hardly ever call myself a conservative, because conservatism is a very elusive notion, and I believe my position is a bit complicated, but for many years I rejected this identity, saying, no, come on, I'm not a conservative. But after several years I said to myself, what the heck, I mean, why not? So let it be, but let's forget about the label and try to stick to, I think, what is essential. But first, let me say, I believe that by being a philosopher, as I interpret, as I see philosophy, the essence of philosophy, I cannot be but conservative. That is, having studied all those great men, having great minds, having studied so many arguments, insights, counter-arguments, I have, of course I have to make some correction, but I have to take as many of them into account as possible. So I deeply believe that if you make your position on any point, you have to feel this baggage of the past experience. You just cannot pretend you start from scratch, from the beginning, right? You just cannot do it. You cannot say that philosophy started with some wise guy, right, who became an intellectual celebrity. or became a star. Especially that there were some quite good, very wise men in the past, that you must feel the obligation to take into account what was said about human nature, what was said about politics, right? There is not a single formula, liberalism, democracy, well, whatever, monarchy. This is not a good answer to the problems. Once you have at the back of your mind all these reflections, all these ideas, forget about it. If you want to think responsibly, right, and deeply about the political problems, do not jump on the first bandwagon that you see, be it democracy or liberalism or whatever. So by being a philosopher, I am sort of conservative, because well, I always ask my students, if they want to make some statement about the current problem, my question: did you read Spinoza, right? Did you read Plato or Aristotle, right, or St. Thomas Aquinas? Do you know what they said about it? What the arguments are used for or against? And a lot of young people want to have, this easy vehicle that will just, make them go right into the heart of the matter. No way. So that's point number one. Point number two is that I deeply believe that there is, human wisdom is not only contrary to what was his name, Socrates, right? What Socrates said is not intellectual, but somehow embedded. It's been accumulated in the past experience, and this past experience has manifested itself in ideas, but also in institutions, in forms of conduct. So society is a very rich organism, and culture is also a very rich organism. And you cannot, because it's an organism, you cannot make it into a mechanism. You cannot dismember it, right? If you buy a bicycle and you put it to pieces, you can put these pieces together and you have a bicycle again. But if you have an organism and you try to dismember it and then you try to put it back again, it will not be an organism anymore, it will be a dead body. Okay? So this is, society in general is extremely rich and almost impossible to reduce to some formulas or algorithm, right? Or simple rules, or even more complicated rules. It has its own dynamics. Of course, there are society whose dynamics is better and more efficient, and there are society that this dynamics is less efficient. But this is a problem that cannot be really solved easily. So this is my general attitude. First, my position of a philosopher, that I respect the knowledge of almost 2.5 millennia, right? I respect this knowledge, and it's very complex. And on the other hand, I believe that social reality is like a tree, right? It lives, it's green, and it cannot be easily reproduced. So having said that, I add two more points. In my life, I have two unpleasant experiences, and that were the experiences of social engineering. The first experience of social engineering was communism. And it attacked both of these two tenets I pointed out. First, they ignored, neglected, and even despised 2.5 millennia of philosophical output, because they say, well, I mean, this is all nonsense, can be explained away. It all starts with the a theory of Marx, Engels, Lenin, and so on. Class struggle explains everything. I mean, look at any period of time, any period of history, you have the same mechanism of class struggle and so on and so on. But in my experience as a citizen of the People's Republic of Poland, communism was a monstrous machine of social engineering. I mean, it touched, destroyed, and tried to restructure every single cell of a society. A school, right? A family, a state, a university, anything, right? The way people, the language, thinking. There was no area, no aspect of life that was free from the intervention of the communist ideology. In the course of time, of course, this pressure became slightly milder because of the fatigue, right, of communist institutions. But the essential mechanism was, all the time was the same. So that was my first experience. My second experience was what happened after the fall of communism. At the beginning, I was quite enthusiastic, and to my bewilderment, I noticed that we are beginning to play this game again. Forget about reality as a green tree of life, flourishing in its richness. Forget about it. Everything has to be regulated according to pre-established or predetermined doctrine. Of course, it's called differently, right? It's called liberal democratic. But there is no area in social life that can come other than liberal democratic. The schools, again, the universities, the language, family, and this attack, right, on the institution. But they cannot simply exist by themselves. They have to be changed because it's the enlightened truth that has to be obeyed. What the liberal democrats were saying, that, I mean, we are very open people. We just want to set up general rules for the entire society, and communities and organizations may function respecting those general rules. So that was point number one. And point number two. Okay, yeah, we set up general rules for the entire society, but then you have education, right? Take an example in education. Well, we just set up general rules, liberal democratic rules for the education, but every school has to obey. But within the school, they can do what you want. Wait a minute. I mean, come on. We've just set up the general rules in this class, right? And so on, and so on, and so on. There is no area of, in modern society, in Polish, Slovak probably too, American, English, Belgian, that is free from this arrangement. There is does not feel pressure to adapt itself, and it does not adapt itself willingly, that will be coerced to do it. School, family, churches. The churches have to become liberal democratic. If not, they will end up in the heap of history. This attack, yeah, okay, I will shut up in a minute. So my point is that I see today, as I saw it, a different language, different means, thank God, but still the same tendency to do it. Just the last sentence or the last idea. I can say that I published a book on the subject. It's called A Child of the Common Man, which I draw the parallel, intellectual, philosophical parallel between communism and what it passes today for liberal democracy. It will come out this year in the United States in English.
Thank you very much, Professor. So we have the first outlines, first foundations presented. And now, because both of you say that you like and know, you like ancient philosophy, we are going to test your exchanges. The first issue is religion, of course. It was touched already by Samuela Abraháma. Mr. Abraham, why is religion so dangerous for liberals? Why do they want to keep it in private affair? What is so dangerous about religion in politics and public sphere?
Well, thank you. Well, as I mentioned, one of the norm of liberal democracy is religious toleration. So, but before I touch I just want to comment on Professor Legutko talk that just demonstrated my point, and actually 2 points. One is that the question was why I'm conservative, but I didn't hear the definition why. I mean, there was a criticism of communism and liberal democracy, and that's fine, and I can be even more critical on both, actually. I wrote a book which is called Price of Liberal Democracy. I'll give it to you, so it's the third thing you didn't mention. And then there's no problem. Actually, internal criticism of liberal democracy is the most interesting debate you can have. So this is the thing that I would really like to hear, besides talking about religion, Mr. Legutko, really what alternative political arrangement conservatism has for our modern society. That's the thing. Another thing is, all the critics of liberal democracy, they want to live in liberal democracy. They don't want to go to Iran, they don't want to go to Somalia, they don't want to go to an island off the shore of Indian Ocean where there's no water. They want to live in Brussels, in London, in Bratislava, and so on. Now, coming back to your question about religion, actually, as I said, there is, as we talk about history, and we can talk about the history of philosophy, but we can talk about the history of our societies, of religious wars, religious tension, and then we see it again. Fortunately, not in Europe. It's outside of Europe, but it already precipitates to Europe as well. The religious intoleration. Now, if the main norm of liberal democracy is religious toleration, so this is the best regime that religion can thrive. And actually, this is when, if you read, and of course you most likely did, St. Augustine, City of God, he says, what is the role of state for believers? It has to protect, it makes to allow a religious believer to express and cultivate in religion in protection. And this is one thing that liberal democracy provides. Now you said, why does it have to keep it in private, right? Now, from 1618 to 1648, we had 30 years of religious wars. And one reason for those 30 years of religious war was that politics and religion merged into one. And if you were not believing in my religion, you have to be killed. There is no other discussion. And actually, it was in 1648 when leaders met in Westphalia, and they said, let's sever politics from religion, not because we are not religious, but because we cannot go on killing each other. So this is the most precious thing for a believer, to express his beliefs while not imposing it on others. One Kantian definition of liberalism is that your freedom goes as long as you are not restricting freedom of someone else. This is exactly the case. Now, we know that many religions, especially Christian religion, which went through its centuries of fire, now they're rather cultivated and actually provided all the basic values and moral norms that we have. But we know that there are religions that are not interested to debating with you. And that's why it is better to keep that in private rather than to put it in the public form and dictate life according to its norms. Be it catechism of the Catholic Church, be it Sharia of a Muslim religion.
Let me, before we move to Professor Legutko, let me zoom into your argumentation and ask you, generally speaking, liberal people either lose or don't have a religious belief. Do you think it's a coincidence or why is it so?
No, I know many people who are liberal and who have now this is, I mean, if you read Charles Taylor, who actually wrote a masterpiece recently called The Secular Age. And then actually at the end, this great, one of the greatest, perhaps the greatest philosopher alive, admits that he's a Catholic, which was surprising. And then my friend Bella, who was his student, was shocked by this admission because he was a student, but Taylor didn't project this Catholicism to his student because he was a philosopher. Now, but what he says that our age, and this is not a question of liberals, it is the general modern era, that we live in a box of a secular age, where reason actually questions everything, and you don't have to be liberal to have it. Now, if you want to shut that off, the reason questioning that whether that cell phones has some divine inspiration on it, or it follows the rules of physics, it's your business. But it is very difficult for modern human being in the secular age to put himself or herself back to the position which was so natural until, let's say, mid-19th century, where it was assumed that everyone believed, and only few who argued, and who might be read Socrates and Plato, might start arguing from starting with humanism and enlightenment, that the question the existence of religion. Now, religion has a various manifestation. If it's life-enhancing, because that's what our tradition is for several millennia. This is the best for our civilization. Because nothing worse happened than during the French Revolution, that when they wanted to get rid of anything, it started with tabula rasa. Because it denied anything what was precious and valuable, and there Edmund Burke is the most brilliant observer of this. Now, if the religion is becoming part of state, part of power, part of money, politics, then it's not life-enhancing but life-denigrating. And there, it's the institution of religion and religion itself that has to be distinguished. And sometimes I hear from many religious leaders that they don't do this distinction.
Professor Legutko, why religion has to be part of the public life? And please, let's agree that we will not talk about Iran and Muslim countries. Let's concentrate on Europe and our part of the world, and Christian countries.
Well, if it comes to an example, we will give example what we want.
Floor is yours.
Once there were time to use reductio ad Hitlerum, reductio ad Irakum, ad Iranum. Now, of course, liberal democracy did not defeat communism. Communism was defeated by well, all these forces that this terrible social engineer of communists tried to subdue, and there were, well, religion was one of the powerful factors that finally led to the collapse of communism. But also there are some other ideas. So I do not accept the thesis that communism fell because it was attacked or was defeated by liberal democracy. No, no, that is something which I don't accept. And I never say that liberalism is well, sort of relativistic, soft, and on the contrary, I think that liberalism is very doctrinaire, very rigid, and that's why very efficient as particularly pernicious as a form of social engineering. And that brings me to the question of religion. Well, in the early modern age, somebody came up with the idea of separation of church and state. Now, separation of church and state, at least in Europe, was a fiction. It was not a fiction perhaps in the United States, the only country where you had sort of separation of church and state. What you had in Europe, and you can find it explicitly stated in John Locke and his letter on toleration, and also in books, was the liberals like John Locke were against Catholicism, and they were against sort of stronger and more outspoken form of Christianity. So what they came up with was the control of the religion by the state. In Europe, in Protestant countries, mostly Protestant countries, religion became controlled and regulated by the state. How can you speak of a separation of church and state when you have the king, the head of the church? And from that time on, you had a constant tendency to interfere, the interference of the state in the religious matters. In John Locke and elsewhere, the state or the government, right, or the politicians are interested in elements of creeds, in elements of worship, because they look at it from political point of view. I mean, do we want to have this religion? Usually we don't. So essentially, there is this lack of sympathy, to say the least, and in a lot of cases hostility towards religion. They wanted to change religion, and they're doing this today. Okay, you can have your bloody religion if you want, but you can have it our way, right? And in the Catholic countries, at least some of it was different. You have the Catholic Church, which is sometimes stronger, sometimes not so strong. You have checks and balances that you have. The government is not free to do anything they want, because there's a church who say, no, I mean, you cannot do it because you are not the authority of morality. You cannot legislate morality. You cannot legislate human nature. You cannot legislate what is right and wrong. But in a country where the churches are very big, that's precisely what the governments do. What they do in France, what they do in Britain nowadays. So the religion, I would say, not only should be, by the preserving of freedom depends on the strong existence. I just make too many gestures. The preserving of freedom, of I would say the sanity of social life, depends very strongly on the public presence of church in one form or the other. It's not the church is not the parliament, right? The church is not the executive. The church is not the judiciary. but it is a part, it should be a part of the social, political life in the societies that are fortunate enough to have the church.
Before we open the next exchange, question was raised about your conservative ideal society. How should?
Okay. It's a very often quoted saying by Winston Churchill, I think made in the House of Commons about democracy, that it's a bad regime, but no better regime can be invented. Well, I have 2 points to make. The first, if democracy is not a perfect regime, so democracy has to have some disadvantages, right? Some drawbacks, some defects. So we should think hard what to do with these. How can we counteract? How can we improve what is wrong in a democratic society? And certainly the answer shouldn't be the remedy of democracy, the ills of democracy is more democracy. This is a wrong answer if Churchill was right that this is not a perfect system. So too much democracy is no good. That's the obvious conclusion from the statement. And the second point is, that's of course not true, that no better system was invented. Of course it was. We have a better system. Conceptually, it was formulated, of course, in antiquity, as all good things were discovered in antiquity, philosophically at least. It was in Plato's Laws, and then in Aristotle, what they called a mixed regime. That is a system that contains the elements of various types of other systems. That is, the fact that you have universal suffrage to elect your representatives in the parliament does not mean that you have to have the same right in schools and everywhere, or in culture, right? So this idea of a mixed regime was taken up by Cicero, who translated it into Latin as a res publica, right? Republic. And for people in the 18th century, Great Britain or England was considered to be a republic, though formally it was a monarchy. But from that point of view, it was a republic, because it was a mixed regime. The United States, which is the embodiment of liberal democracy, was constructed originally as a republic. Of course, it changed very quickly. In the first half of the 18th century, it was already very much democratic. It's very democratic today. What we call Western democracies were, for many years, for many decades, mixed regimes. So I do not see the necessity that we are doomed, we are in some caught up in the inexorable laws of history that everything has to become liberal democratic. No, of course not. Of course not. There are, in a good society, a good system, there are institutions that are not and should not be liberal or democratic, or liberal democratic, like the church, or the family, or the school, or many, many other institutions. Because otherwise, you will have this feeling of impotence, because there is an inexorable inevitability. I mean, we live in an age when nothing else can be done, because there is this political necessity. Life is unthinkable outside liberal democracy, because the alternative is Iraq and Pol Pot and something like that. No, I mean, that is what liberalism made us think. It reduced our sphere of intellectual pursuit. half a century ago, when you look at political theories, half a century ago, 60 years ago, 70 years ago, Western political thought was full of various political ideas. And then after John Rawls, probably, it all ended, right, and you have this, well, machine that produces the same copies, right, the same rather sterile, arid sort of ideology. So,
thank you. We have direct reaction.
Yes. You said that there's a threat that alternative to liberal democracy is some kind of theocracy. No, actually there's no alternative. And that's unfortunate because there are so many problems, so many mistakes. We see quarter century of Czechoslovakia and Slovakia, how it's ridden with problems. I wish there was a mixed regime. But what does mixed regime mean? Either Aristotelian or a regime that is described by Machiavelli, not in his Prince, but discourses. Mixed regime for Aristotle was not only of the leaders who know what's best for the regime, but the society. Every human being in that society knew what's his or her place in that society. Now, do we have that now? No, we don't, unfortunately. I wish we did. And you being mostly young people, you must be quite frustrated seeing politicians really doing everything in their own personal favor rather for the good for the society. Now this is the problem, that you have perhaps imperfect structure of democracy, liberal democracy, imperfect because there's no ideal in view. And you have human nature, human beings who are often selfish, who are full of fears, who are doing things for them and not for the rest of the society. And how do you negotiate it in this group of millions of people to assure decency and human rights for an individual? For an individual who is a minority. Be it a Roma, be it someone else who is here and who is looked down upon by majority. Now, as I said, I wish there was an alternative. And you mentioned republic, we are all republics, except of course with constitutional monarchies, England among them, and poor Elizabeth II, who is the head of the Church of England, has no influence on running the government. And now monarch for centuries in England. And this is how constitutional monarchy works. But unfortunately, mixed regime is not a design. Mixed regime in Aristotelian term is who are those people who are part of the society and how do they know what's their position. And that we don't have in 21st century.
Good point.
Yes, I mean, there are lots of issues. First, yes, the good thing about mixed regime is that you may be politically creative, and that's particularly, or was particularly applicable to a country like Poland or Slovakia. Or any other former Soviet bloc countries, where the old regime fell and we were faced up with the problem how to organize, right, our political life. And there was no political creativity at work. Nobody dared to do differently. So we imitated all sorts of solutions, most of them, or some of them at least, to bad effect. The same about universities, right? It was the imitation of this more and more liberal democratic order. No, I believe that if you look at in France or look at Great Britain, well, 60 years back, you see a different way of political arrangement. You look at the courts, how the courts were, how laws were formulated. it's going the same direction, which I deplore, but I want to indicate, if you pardon me, about certain inconsistency. When you were standing here and you were praising the virtues of liberals, you were saying that this is the system of liberty. You have your choice. You can do anything, right? You can be what you want. You are not forced by impersonal forces to be this way or to be that way. And sitting here in this chair, you are saying, there is no alternative. Well, we have to do things that are being done. Well,
I keep asking you, what should be the alternative?
Either one or the other. I mean, are we free or are we not free? I mean, we are the enemies of the laws of history. By the way, I think that the idea that liberalism stands for freedom is one of the greatest hoax in the history of philosophy.
And now to rights and wrongs. In the center of liberalism is the individual with rights that has to be respected and protected. Why the liberals are unable to protect the right of unborn children? Either it's 3 months old like in Slovakia or 9 months old like in the United States. Why the abortion can be legal and legitimate in legal form?
Well, it is for us to negotiate. If we had a referendum, didn't we? We had a referendum, and you could go and a majority could vote. Can vote. Can referendum can order these things. Now, this is question of technology, modernity, and technicality. In 17th century, 16th century, you didn't have this discussion. Now, as the technology advances, all of a sudden we see that conception has a very different manifestations. Now, why are you asking me why someone conceived in 3 months being in the belly of a woman should not be protected and abortion should not be abolished? This is interesting that whatever debate we start, we end up with this, and there might be 1 or 2 other topics. But I can tell you, this is I knew a woman who had abortion, and it was most dreadful experience, psychological, for her. And I believe it is very much in her decision to make this decision, this dreadful decision, because it's something that affects woman in all her nature and all her being. This decision. It is I think still the woman's right to decide this, and not man like you or me or a legislator that would order whether women could or should do it. And then, being practical, you want to do it illegally, as it has been done for many years. So these are two elements. I mean, I don't have a clear, and I don't want to quarrel with you that abortion must be preserved. This is a very delicate question. It's for women. Let's leave it in her decision, or decision of those two who conceived that concept, conceived that.
We don't force anybody here to do something. But the question, you said that majority can rule how to manage this right. So majority can decide what is right and what is wrong?
No, I'm saying that if you, this is one of the deficiency, that you can have a majority who can order anything, including this. It can order autocracy. It can order a totalitarian regime. That's the problem with democracy. Fortunately, so far we escaped this. We didn't. Germany didn't escape in the 30s, but mostly people are rational and see what's good for them. Eventually, they vote what is best for them, and they know what's good for them and their children. Now, you said that majority could order. Well, this is a delicate debate that wasn't waged in our society properly, I think. I believed in Canada many debates that discuss this issue, which is very delicate, which is very problematic, and as more as we advance and as technologically, we see the complexity of the issue. Now, then there's at some point you have to decide whose right do you prefer. Is it you as a man to order that woman not to have abortion, or to have her and her husband or someone whom she conceived the child to decide? This is for a long debate. I won't give this ideological offhand nonsense answer. Let's have abortion. This is what has been decided by politicians, by our society long ago.
Let me just, before we switch on the other side, let me just clear one more thing. You said that you prefer if these issues are decided by referendum or in a popular way.
No, I said that there's an option. You know, you can have a referendum preventing abortion, and you won't have it.
The question is this: do you see as a problem when these issues are decided by courts, like in Anglo-Saxon countries? Is it worse or better if they are decided by courts or by majorities in parliament?
No. If you don't have to decide an abortion in a court. In Slovakia or in the United States, it's legislated that woman has a right until a certain moment to have an abortion. So you don't have to go to court.
But generally speaking, for society, what is better? If it's decided by parliament or by constitutional court?
Parliament doesn't decide. Parliament issues a law, and law then is followed and the law and Parliament doesn't have an executive power. Then it is by courts that follow whether that law is followed or not.
Conservatives believe in natural order, but you just said in the previous minute that it's the role of the church to decide, to say what is moral and not moral. That state should do it. That state shouldn't do it. But why do you see as a problem when state allows people to get married, men and woman and woman? Maybe church can do it, but why state shouldn't do it? Why do you think the definition of marriage should be protected?
Well, let me repeat what I said before. I mean, that one of the reasons why I became very critical of what has been going on, not only in my country but elsewhere, is this terrible social engineering. I mean, this arrogant intrusion, right, and changing laws, reformulating, making outrageous claims by the courts and legislature, and it is sort of like by crusades. The question of abortion, the question of so-called homosexual marriages, as my colleague from the European Parliament probably would confirm, it has become a sacred cause. I mean, these people want to make an ideological crusade throughout the world. Law or not law. It's the European Commission, right? It's national governments. That's where I see a similarity between communism and liberal democracy of today. That is this hubris, right? This arrogance. The communists reverse the current of Siberian rivers that is trying to do it. Why not? I mean, we have the power. Well, we decided, the communist, the Politburo decided that the current of the Siberian rivers would be reversed. And here, we do not reverse the current of the rivers, but we redefine marriage. Why not? We have the majority. We can legislate that 2 + 2 is 5. Well, that's democracy, right? We have the majority. This is this lack of respect for institutions of long standing. You just don't do it, right? If you do it, if you are a member of parliament, maybe you are not well informed. But this arrogance is unacceptable. I mean, I feel threatened. I feel threatened into this society in a certain way as I was threatened in the past. Because I have no idea what they will come up with next time. Because I see those crazy ideologies, you know, with the fiery eyes. So no, be careful, right? Politicians keep out. Judges keep out too, because judges also think that they are priests. Look how Roe v. Wade was decided, which legalized abortion in the United States. That was, from the legal point of view, it was outrageous. They deduced the right to abortion from the right to privacy. That doesn't exist anywhere in the American Constitution. They deduced it from the non-existent right. And it stayed that way. It tried to now go back to the pre-Roe v. Wade decision. Politically impossible.
Thank you. Before we open discussion, short reaction.
Well, I just wonder why this kind of debate has to end up on these 2 issues. Why abortion and same-sex marriage? It relates to either to privacy or a very small number. And why debate has to be completely stopped by this? Why this obsession? I don't understand this. I mean, these are important, sensitive issues, but it kills the debate. We have not able to discuss that because the trenches are very deep. I mean, we have been discussing the current crisis in our society that are startling. And no, we don't have to talk about Iran if we talk about the crisis of liberal democracy, of European Union, that are here and they are touching every one of us every day. And we end up with these 2 issues. I don't understand that.
Maybe because we value dialogue and we want to seek the truth. And there might be other answers as well. Now is the time for discussion. I am sure that Jan Kolar will be ashamed that we Slavs speak together in English, but please stay with English. Introduce yourself shortly and raise the question, please.
My question is that to answer the question of Dr. Abraham, maybe because it's similar to slavery or racial discrimination. My question for you is, would you use the same argumentation for justifying that slave owners can own slaves, that they have right to choose whether they own slaves or not? That's my question. Thanks.
Well, that's I guess it's a clever question, but I was not bouncing here telling you abortion are the something that is sanctified. This is for us to decide. This is delicate issue, and then when we are deciding about the human rights of a woman and human rights of a slave, we have to think what is important. Now, to use your argumentation that somehow to use slavery as the same argument, you are actually undermining the right of woman to choose her, I would say, sacred right, if you wish. And as I said, I'm not saying that I'm on a crusade for this. This is for society to negotiate, and for that it can legislate against that, and there are countries that legislate against that.
Can I have one more question? If you can explain me how I'm against right of a woman somehow when I am against abortion.
No, okay, so you are obsessed. All right. No, I respect. I mean, as I said, why do we have to finish with this to debate? Okay. Woman conceives a child. Now, this is a delicate legal, moral, psychological question for her, and now the society has to respond somehow. Has to deal with this. Now, you cannot go both ways. If she wants to get rid of it and you don't allow that, she will do it illegally and she might die. And then this is something that you have to use some kind of pragmatism. Now, if you want to reduce it to a division between us, how we understand our society, what is most precious and what is not, then I don't see much we can find in common. But I see the woman's right as very important to respect, and that's my answer.
Just one more. Would you?
Many questions. Come on, I can talk to you over the.
Please let's stay on the within the limits of philosophical debate, not about.
I hope so. I hope so.
No. Well, the first question is here.
Yes.
We have the first question here, then over there.
Yes. Here.
Moment, please. Just a minute, because this hand was raised first, and then you go.
You weren't even looking this way. You were looking at Sam.
This is the second question.
Môžem po slovensky? No, vy ste hovoril, pán Abrahám, že sloboda človeka končí tam, kde by obmedzoval slobodu iného. Čiže slobodné rozhodnutie ženy môže obmedziť slobodu toho nenarodeného dieťaťa napríklad. Čiže čo má prednosť? Právo na život, alebo právo rozhodnúť sa zabiť to nenarodené dieťa. To som sa chcel spýtať. A ešte som sa chcel spýtať, že čo sa vám tak hlavne nepáči na tom konzervativizme, že prečo sa nemôžete stať konzervatívcom a čo škodí ľudstvu. A potom pána Legutka som sa chcel, čo vadí zase vám na liberalizmu, prečo sa nemôžete stať liberálom.
Ďakujeme pekne. Tie druhé dve otázky už páni zodpovedali v tom prvom stupe, takže poprosíme na tú prvú otázku.
Okay, well, I mean, who I am to respond? There are so many women in this room. Why would any of you respond? I would be so, and whatever your position be. And it's much more than me. Us men are telling who is more.
Hello? Yes.
Who has the right to decide? There are so many intelligent women who can talk about it. Let's we men shut up about these things for a second. Why I'm not conservative? I tell you, my favorite writers are conservative. Edmund Burke is one of my favorite authors, who has so much common sense, and I love to read him, and he has the greatest critics. Michael Oakeshott is also the author who is very much, whom I really respect. Now, what has happened that the conservatism today has reduced, beside these two questions we were debating, unfortunately, to things that it's only criticism. I still haven't heard today from Professor Legutko what is the alternative conservative regime besides saying that religion should have more say in a society. Well, it's an authority of religion that has to be made naturally. You cannot legislate that. And then, same as communists legislated their ideology, there's nothing worse than that there is a regime that legislates a papal or any other legislature. So this is the reason why I'm not conservative. Now, as I said, today's conservatives are very similar to early liberals of 19th century, and if you want after debate, I can give you both references or describe you how is it so.
I believe it was answered. Professor Legutko said that he prefers republic.
What does it mean?
It's just said. Second question, third question, sir. Close it.
I'm a little bit upset that I don't like the way the debate has gone on, because why cannot we say that the choice to have an abortion or not to have an abortion is already a bad choice? That in fact, I'm personally against abortion. I wish that abortion would be eliminated. I wish that people would not have to be faced with that choice. But maybe that's a bit idealistic. I don't sort of have this absolute right of the individual, but I do believe that in democratic societies, as we know them, whether we like it or not, we've agreed that overwhelming majority positions will have to hold the day, and it's not so much a respect for individual women's rights, it's the respect for the institutions of liberal democracy that one has to defend in this case. So I just want to make these 2 points. One can be very much against abortion, as I am. I wish abortion never would be a choice for anyone. But if it is regrettably a choice, I mean, we have to allow it, because not so much because we make sacred individual women's rights sacred, because we make liberal democracy and the institutions of it sacred.
Professor.
Well, from a certain point of view, everything is about the choice to make a decision. But I would say that this obsession that I agree is in the modern world probably started in the 1960s with the sexual revolution, right? Sex became the central issue, and anything, since that time everything is related with sex. It is not we who started to play this game. But I would say that, and secondly, that abortion is not a religious issue. And it's been a tendency to say, well, you are Catholic, so you have to be. You have to be, right? If I'm not a Catholic or I'm a Christian, well, I might be, I don't have to be against abortion. So that's not true. I mean, the arguments against abortion are vital ones. And I would say my position is that against abortion is an infinitely sounder position, because it less doctrinal, because it expresses ignorance or lack of certainty. You have something that might be, or some is, a human being. And since you cannot prove conclusively and ultimately that this is not a human being, you be careful, okay? You be careful. And that has, of course, nothing to do with rights. I mean, if you start talking about rights, there is no debate at all. I mean, this is not. The question is whether it is right or wrong. Is it admissible or not admissible? And my point is the minimalist position is not admissible because of this ignorance or lack of certainty. And no matter how many courts or legislatures decide, they will not make something that is uncertain, certain. If all legislators in the world say that you can perform abortions, it doesn't make it acceptable morally. Okay? And besides, there is also the slippery slope. Here, you can have it everywhere. It starts with this, well, hard cases. And then it ends up with 14-year-olds or 16-year-olds that can have abortion at will without the consent of the parents. Or partial birth abortions. So this is a slippery slope.
Another questions, please? I don't know who was the first, so let's start from the beginning. Go ahead.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Malo, and I would like to point two questions for each one. First, for Mr. Legutko, you in your first speech says that all aspects of social life has to be regulated, and then you say that no institution can live or survive at all. Well, I would just like to have this question, that whether can you imagine that friendship as a kind of institution could be somehow regulated. And for Mr. Abraham, I had a question, again with abolitionists, but in a different view, that in Poland there was this case, about the doctors which do not want to commit abortions. And can you imagine that in liberal democracy there would be allowed for doctors to not commit these actions?
Conscience protection, but can you say again the question to Professor Legutko, because we couldn't hear?
Oh, okay. For Mr. Legutko, you said that all aspects of social lives has to be regulated somehow. So I'm asking you simply if you can imagine regulation of a friendship.
I have a very short answer. I mean, this is common practice that if a doctor doesn't want to perform abortion, then he or she is allowed to have that. In some cases where it runs into the administration, there is a problem. But most of the countries, and there are a number of more and more countries that do that actually. I don't know how it is in Poland, but in many countries, doctors do not have to perform abortion if it's against their moral conviction.
There is a misunderstanding. I never said that. I said that this is what happens in the social engineering, which happens in liberal democracy, and then before it happened in communism, that every aspect of life has to be regulated. It's not my position. No, of course not. No, I'm against it, of course. Now, this is somewhat more tricky about this, because there are conscious clauses in various countries. They become weaker and weaker, by the way. In many countries, so-called liberal, you just cannot refuse. The doctor cannot refuse, and the priest cannot refuse to marry two men, right? Because he goes to jail. But it's become more tricky, because even in many countries, the doctor may refuse to perform abortion, but has to indicate his colleague who will do it. So in that way, the doctor becomes, his conscience is violated because he becomes incriminated in this practice. So it's really quite a sinister policy that we are having today.
Why are conscience protection clauses rejected by liberals in general?
Sorry?
Conscience clauses. Conscience clauses, why are they rejected by...
What do you mean they are rejected? Where
I think in Slovak debate, for example, when we had debate on Holy See Treaty, there was a proposal to, in the name of conscience, to not to, in case we had a marriage of two men, not to that led to men to have a conscience protection clause against that protecting minority, like with abortion.
Well, and then what has to do with our treaty with the Holy See?
Liberals always reject it as an idea, that it's somehow against stability of society also.
They reject the marriage of two
we will leave for... Sorry. But we have a couple more questions and 20 minutes remaining, so please.
My name is Ryszard. I'm a father and a husband mostly, and also economist. So I have one question for both of you. It seems to me that that there is a link between communism and liberalism, which is materialism. So would you agree or would you disagree with that? And second question is for Mr. Abraham. Would you support the right of parents to educate their children at home without state interference?
We have an echo here. But we had
the question was whether communism and liberalism, whether it connects the materialism.
Okay. Well, in a way, yes. I mean, my argument about the similarities is rather complicated, but I would agree in this sense that liberalism reduced the scope of human nature. We talked about Socrates and the classical view of human nature. So all these higher things became chopped off in modernity, particularly in liberalism, but not also, as becoming sort of unnecessary, right? I mean, if you want to pursue and develop them, you are free to do it. But they are not constitutive of the human nature. Human nature, if you look at classical liberals, was really defined by the principle of utility and self-preservation. That's what defines the human nature. All the rest might follow from being added to it, but it's not part of human nature. Whereas if you take Socrates or Plato or St. Thomas Aquinas, soul is what makes man man.
Okay. Well, I answered first the second question. Go ahead, please. I think this is wonderful. If parents are able to devote so much energy as Mr. Polgar did with his daughters, who became the master in chess, and many other examples. Of course, if parents are able to devote enough energy and they know what's the problem in this, absolutely. Now with the rather sinister question whether it connects materialism. Now, as you heard me talking about liberalism, it has norms and principles that materialism actually plays important but not significant, not dominating role. And if you read Marxists, of course, materialism is key to things, but it also has talks about moral values and so on. So that's also in that ideology is present. But coming back to liberalism, as I mentioned, there are early liberals and late liberals who actually introduced welfare state, and at some point in the 20th century you could hardly distinguish between liberals and social democrats, because both of them have welfare state to be installed in society in order to prevent the economic depravity between rich and poor. Now, this is one thing in our modern society that we are not going to be able to resolve, whether conservative, liberals, or whoever. that you have to preserve, in order to have guaranteed freedoms and rights, you have to preserve economic inequality and political equality. And there will be always tension between the two. Because you will have those who would have more money and less money, and then those who would have more money would try to influence politics, as we see it now, as we see it today. Now we also have a welfare system which is not very good, as you can observe, and then those who are retired pensioners who receive 300-400 euros a month, you can see that welfare system is awful. But now you say it is all material. Liberals are often confused with two other, libertarians and neoliberal. Neoliberal are actually people who reduce everything into economics. You know, it's economics stupid. Remember that Clinton's saying that it is economics that is key and all the rest is just gibberish, just a talk. And these are neoliberals, and they don't want ideology. Libertarians, on the other hand, they say that state should not interfere in our freedoms. And then often liberals are confused with this. And liberals, of course, we know that you cannot have a decent human existence without some material well-being. You cannot. What is the freedom for a Kenyan who has nothing to eat, or a poor Roma somewhere in the settlement in Slovakia? So this, from this position, material part is important, but it has nothing to do with liberalism. It has to do with us. As soon as you would feel that you would not have enough money and food to give your children, you would behave completely different than you behave now. And has nothing to do with the liberal ideology or any ideology, be it conservative or otherwise. I beg your pardon?
How do I behave now?
Well, you behave, actually, you love your children, you actually take care, and you are a very respectful, I presume, to those who are around you. But imagine that all of a sudden you would be deprived and you would see that tomorrow there was nothing on the table. Who knows how you or anybody would start to behave. And actually, another definition is that we shouldn't come to this kind of choices. This is one of the definitions of liberalism. That's what I said, that it doesn't have you should not be confronted with the choice of life and death, or preserving my life and killing someone else just to survive. This is one important thing that we should not face.
Sorry, we have to take other questions first, please. Good evening. Please go ahead.
At first, I would like to answer the question of Mr. Abraham, because he said why we always end up in those two things. Because we are being socially engineered, as Mr. Legutko said, as we were during communism, during Nazism, and it's happening now. We are being socially engineered, and because people think we are living in the freedom. But for example, it's abortion thing. Doctors are told they have a choice not to do it, but they are facing punishment from hospitals, from their employees. They wouldn't give them like a full contract or something like that. What is happening if we are living in freedom? They chose something and they are being punished for that. And about the next thing is, you are saying about the rights of the women. Where is the right of the child? Yesterday, we heard in a lecture of Ms. Cassini that in Europe, there is no country that would say that embryo is a product. It's a law statement that embryo is rather a human being than a product. So why we are not protecting the right of the human embryo if it is human? No country says it's a product. And I would like to ask Mr. Legutko if we are facing these severe problems in this era, how we should progress forward for next generations.
Raise the microphone and repeat the question.
Okay, so if we are facing those problems in this era, how we should progress? Like, what's the way we should go next?
Be as short as possible.
Well, I hope you are not socially engineered. You look as an intelligent human being, and you say that we are socially engineered. Where do you live? I mean, even in Slovakia, I don't feel that we are socially engineered. We are free to say.
I have a personal experience.
Well, share it with your friends. Write a book. But this is we are not socially engineered. I'm sorry. Put some respect to what we have and how you live and how decent we live. This was a ladies' museum, so remember there has been some changes. Now tell me, because I cannot answer those things, although maybe I should, because somehow you want. But tell me, if the abortions were abolished, no abortion, and if the same-sex marriages were abolished, would that make you happy? Okay. And would that resolve the problems of this world? Tell me yes or no. No. This is not. Well, this is the question.
To you.
Would that make you happy and it would resolve all the ills of our society?
We don't have a psychological debate, we have a philosophical debate.
No, the answer, don't laugh.
I'm not laughing. If somebody steals your car, would it make you happy to kill him? It's the same thing.
Why don't you answer those two things? If they are abolished, would you make you happy?
Sorry, actually you didn't answer my question.
Well, that's true.
Well, I think yes, we are. There is a tremendous social engineering. You can see indeed how law is changing. It's become homogeneous, and there is a tremendous pressure of homogeneity, conformity. That has become a major problem everywhere. The same ideas are being transmitted through all possible channels. The laws, the schools, the media, the sort of common sense in inverted commas. Of course, if you want to be a modern man, of course you have to be for abortion. Of course, I mean, it would be shameful not to support homosexual marriage. And this sort of conformity that is imposed on us is extremely dangerous. I think you have a point. Yes, there is social engineering. What can you do about it? Do not give up. Certainly do not buy this notion that there are impersonal forces that you cannot resist. Do resist them. Do resist them. They are very strong, they have major institutions, European institutions, and they are controlled by when you look at what is being produced by the documents of the European Commission or the European Parliament. In every document, in foreign affairs, security, forestry, anything, you have passages about abortion and homosexual marriages. Am I exaggerating? Of course not. This is a powerful mechanism, so my advice to you, resist, do not capitulate. Because those guys who were before them, communists, they were saying also that the history is on their side. That, we are hopeless, we cannot do anything because communism is our future. No, communism was not our future. It's long dead and gone, and I'm grateful for that. And now it's time to resist those guys because they're very dangerous and they are very powerful. Do try not to conform.
Thank you. We have almost 10 o'clock, so please, two ladies, Please, we will now collect 3 questions, okay? And be as short as possible, and we will answer it and close the panel. So, there's some lady and this guy in blue.
Good evening. My name is Andra. I have actually one question for Mr. Abraham. And as a mother, I'm no politics, I'm no philosopher, I'm just a mother. And when I'm thinking about liberalism as an opportunity for the future, I think it's just a big, how it's called, a big problem for our future, because we can see it in the other country, how that works. If I, for example, if I imagine to telling my children, to telling my girls that they can take decision if they will be girls or boys, or if I imagine explaining them that they have right to use the sexual feelings, and it's just, I'm just worried.
So what is the question?
The question is, don't you think that the liberalism is bringing to our children just more and more problems?
Wait, next question in the back. Girls first, please. Girls first.
Hi, Catherine, and I'd like to ask you about economics rather.
Please raise the microphone like this and speak up.
Is this better?
Yes.
Good. So my question would not be about abortion, so you might relax. It's for Professor Abraham about economics. So you spoke about the Great Financial Crisis, 2007 to 9. You spoke about the Great Financial Crisis, recent one. You said it wasn't. I mean, I'm not quite sure what your opinion is, but you made it sound that libertarianism or liberalism had nothing to do with it, or hardly anything. But when you think about the incentives that free market provided at the time, with the lack of regulation, you had absolutely no moral hazard controls, you had self-selection problems. So if you look at actually the market only did what liberalism would suggest, so it catered to the choice. The choice was given by the consumers, by the financial investors, and they just came up with the financial derivatives. They came up with CDOs, CDO squared. All of them were super risky assets escalated into the crisis. So how would you explain that having the free market with absolutely no regulation at all is the best way to go forward when you cannot eliminate the moral hazard?
Third question in the back. Oh, here the man in the blue with the glasses. Yes?
Thank you for joining and your patience. One question, maybe joining the question. Both of you mentioned something what I will call, it was not your words, a common enemy for both of you. Both of you mentioned communism as something bad, what you fear and what you want to defend. Why don't you spend more, not you personally, but the conservatives and liberals from post-communistic countries, your energy by joining yourself and building up these countries into places more worth living, because we are still not at a level where both of you, I think, would like to be. So, to all these child illnesses which our countries have from post-communism, to join your energy candidate. Thank you.
We have one more question in the back.
Good evening. I would like to ask why the discussion is always between what to regulate. Because liberals want to regulate something, conservatives want to regulate something else, and why you don't think about whether to even regulate something or whether to regulate everything. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last question, Madam Member of European Parliament. which I forgot to welcome in the beginning, and I apologize for it.
Okay. So it's not a question. I'm very pleased to be here with you, and I would like to say welcome to my colleague, Professor Legutko. Welcome in Slovakia. Why I waited until the end, because Professor Abraham asked ladies in this room about their opinion about abortion. So I think my opinion, each woman has the possibility to decide, but before the conception, because at that time she decides about her life, about her private life, about her body. But when she is pregnant, besides the rape, she not anymore decides only about her private life. She decides also about the life of her child. And this is the very important. We are for freedom of choice, but don't say that after when she is pregnant, she decides only about her private life and about her body. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, gentlemen, please, your closing statements, and if possible, try to answer as many questions as possible.
Andrea, you mentioned that liberalism creates more problems, that you cannot bear that your child would learn about things, would be able to see pornography or be able to discuss sex at school. But this is not truly a question of liberalism, really. I mean, this is the modern era. This is the secular age. This is you can view it as something horrible, something unhuman, that the life in 21st century has been so insidious to our privacy. But actually, privacy is one thing that even liberalism tries to protect. You have the right questions, but I don't think liberalism induces. Liberalism is not a pornographer pusher, nor a drug pusher. It's one way to arrange a relationship, and it's not liberalism that pushes, let's say, sex debate at schools. Now, with the 2008 crisis, I mentioned actually that this is results of this neoliberal politics that has resulted from very insidious deals among big companies and so on, and banks, starting with Clinton and then going with Bush, and an unregulated financial system. As you economists know, the two very self-contained systems. One is kind of a Keynesian, another is Miltonian, or Hayek, or Friedman's. And then these are the two possibilities how to deal with the free market. Keynesian is for regulation, to control, and it has been there, present, available. It wasn't taken. After the crisis, immediately everybody discovered Keynes as a messiah. But it was there for decades, and people knew him. So this is the problem of a free market, that you could ideologize, but actually it's very easy to resolve, as it was actually, by regulation. And actually, liberal democracies are very good at resolving practical issues. Not the abstract issue, unfortunately, but practical issue, yes. Why don't we join forces together? Well, you know, if we are obsessed with these two questions about abortion and same-sex marriages, I mean, this actually leads not about
the debates about abortion, but about homosexuality. And of course, we know that the debate about homosexuality and homosexual relationship in antiquity, in Socrates' time, were completely differently understood than it was until 60s and 70s, our ages. And so this is just another step, and I wish we are as enlightened about that as Socrates and those who surrounded him. Why regulators? Well, there are how many billions of people living on this earth? I mean, you need regulation, the same as you cannot have unregulated traffic when you drive a car. You are willing to submit those. The same thing is for regulation in our relationship. You have passport, you have responsibilities, you have rights. This is a human. This is a human society. And if you are preferring some kind of anarchy, that, you know, let's just do everyone what we wish, even any child can tell you where it can be. This is unfortunate that you have to follow certain regulation, but this is nature, and there will be more regulation, of course, as there are more of us, and as the dangers are coming, as the terrorism threats comes, we will have more cameras and regulation. Unfortunately, but we somehow manage to live with that. The last question. Well, I tell you, true. You can actually say to boys and girls, young men and young women, to be aware of this. But we went through our youth in different stages. We know that we make mistakes. We do have our life as something autonomous, and we decide about our lives. But however true what you say is, what does it help if you have still conception of many children whom those women do not want? Now, what's the point just to say that you are committing sin, and she, with her partners, will go to another country and have an abortion? I mean, I understand your position that women should think, well, men should too, you know, for that matter, but he is not that responsible after those few minutes or hours or whatever. And then why? And this is a delicate thing that we are going to struggle with for a long time. And modernity, you talk about the 60s and sexual revolution. Now, well, abolish that, or let's abolish that. What can we do? I mean, we know that our moral and ethical values are contingent almost these days, because we see so many alternatives. Look how many people get into kind of alternative things, Buddhism and so on, not because they are just fashionable, but they're searching for something what the old traditional religion doesn't provide. It's not any better or worse, but it's an attempt to find out reason and common sense in this mess, which is called modernity. And I just believe that it's the liberalism and its institutions, however imperfect, are best to negotiators in this slalom of craziness that we live in. So that's that. You know.
Some closing remark.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I would be happy to discuss. I hope I didn't cause any shocks of what I said. This is nothing. What I said is uncommon. I hope I was more understanding to these things. What concerns you, and I'm very sorry that the young man who was so disturbed that I have not responded his particular question because I have responded several times before, and Mr. Edet said, and I kind of see that as something that is very important. That even if personally you are against that, you know, you are not a center of universe to decide for these big questions on your own. However much you are closed in a debate. So I hope that next time you will come, you will be able to answer that question that I posed, whether those two issues would resolve the problems of our societies.
Professor, to you, let me add one more question to all those that are right here, and that is, in Slovakia it's always raised, what would happen if abortion would be banned in society? And as far as we understand that modernity is a way how to negotiate things and we can reach different results. Poland reached different results as many other countries, and abortions were banned in the early 90s. So what happened in Poland, please?
Well, we have a restricted abortion. Of course, the pro-abortion law is quite strong and outspoken, but for the time being, it still exists. Of course, there is abortion tourism that happens, but well, I believe that nowadays, in a modern society, banning abortion is certainly something different and better than banning abortion before, considering how many organizations and groups are helping young mothers in difficult times. I mean, we become more sensitive to these problems. So all these awful stories which we know from old movies and new movies well, it's not what we are likely to have here. I think we have distinguished sort of the human aspect and the principle. I mean, you cannot really violate certain principles. Because violating principle leads to more human injuries. It's not a good policy. But just to finish, first, of course, I will thank the organizers. I want to thank my honorable opponent for having a pleasure and opportunity to cross swords with him. It's always nice and helpful. I will not answer these particular questions you will have. I'll make a final comment. I was right after the fall of communism. I was watching the changes here and there, and I was struck by the language of liberalism, both here and elsewhere. That this language has become no longer, or if ever it was, which I doubt, the language of freedom, but it was the language of necessity. You have to do it, right? You have to, because it's the thing that are being done. There is no alternative. Now we live in a state of where we are being told that there are no alternatives. And I think it's particularly important for us, people living in Eastern Europe or Central Europe, where we still have living traditions that have been put aside or eliminated in the European mainstream. So do not feel intimidated by this language of necessity. Because ultimately, I think the cause of freedom is in our hands. That is, if we are defeated, we will be living in a brave new world, where everybody believes that he is absolutely free and absolutely happy.
and everybody is different from anyone else, whereas they all the same. We are on the threshold. I do not want to become poetic, but we are living in the threshold of a brave new earth. So a lot depends on us, and I still believe a lot depends on what's happening here, in this part of Europe. So have faith, not in the religious sense, because I'm not a priest. Have faith that you can, and have courage. Don't be afraid. Do not fear. The late John Paul II, his message when he came to Poland was, do not fear. So he meant something more noble than I do. I just say, do not be afraid, and if you can, give them hell.
Philosophy is beautiful. I believe both our guests, distinguished guests tonight, help us to see it and observe it. So let me thank you on behalf of all organizers, to Professor Ryszard Legutko from Poland and Samuela Abraháma from Slovakia for this discussion, and you for presence and questions. And let me also mention to you that the Prečo festival continues during the weekend. You can see the program on the walls over there, and please come again and enjoy the evenings and concerts, theaters, all the program you will choose. Thank you very much. Goodbye.